It's a story familiar to us all, and we've all been there. We've all had hopes and aspirations and moved to the big city to try and fulfill the grand illusions that we hold of life. In the big city, we get ourselves a model or actress girlfriend, and things then tend to go wrong, and we find ourselves moving home ignominiously, if that's right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to and welcome back to Book Time with Elvis with me, Mark. And yes, I'm going to talk to you today about two books, and I think both of them are well worth you investing your time in them. One's French, one's Russian. The theme is similar. There are definitely similarities between them. However, they both hold their unique charms. And as I said, I think they're very much worth your time. Without further ado, the first one is Lost Illusions by Honoré de Balzac. And it is a wonderful tale. It's about 700 pages or so. It's a wonderful tale of Lucien Chardon, or Lucien de Rubempré, if you depending on which version of his name you want to follow, and if you read the book you'll understand why I use two forms of it. But Lucien, he's a young man. His mother is from an aristocratic lineage. His father was a chemist. However, since the father's death, the family's fallen on hard times. His mother and his sister have had to take menial jobs to support him because he's a lofty dreamer with high ambitions of becoming a well-known author. The mother works herself extremely hard, as does the sister, and they indulge him terribly. The sister ends up marrying Lucien's best friend, who also indulges him terribly and encourages him in his dreams. Lucien falls in love, or starts a dalliance, shall we say, with a local aristocratic woman named Madame Bargeton, and various things happen, of course. You would expect them to. It wouldn't be much of a book, would it, if nothing happened? But various things happen that lead Lucien and Madame Bargeton to move to Paris together. However, it's not long before Madame de Bargeton casts him aside, and now Lucien finds himself penniless and alone in Paris. And he starts to fall in with a kind of literary crowd. He gets himself an actress girlfriend, and things seem to be doing well for him. But of course, he's a bit of an idiot, really, and things end up not going so well, and he forces his family into poverty. And then he's forced to return to his provincial town, Angoulême, to kind of deal with the issues he's caused. Well, you'll see whether he deals with them or not, of course, if you read the book. But it's a fantastic story. It's full of wonderful, not just the wonderful writing, but also the wonderful diversions. Perhaps not as grand as Hugo's Les Miserables when it comes to the tangents that Balzac goes off on, but he does give a lot of interesting and wonderful tidbits of history regarding the history of publishing, printing, and paper in early 19th century France, which maybe doesn't sound super exciting, but it is very interesting, and the story itself is very compelling and thoroughly enjoyable. There are several humorous characters in it. Of course, there are a lot of loathsome and horrible characters in it as well. And generally, I would just say it's a great book, well worth the investment of your very valuable time. The second book I absolutely fell in love with. Now, don't get me wrong, I love Lost Illusions, but I adore this one. And it's Ivan Goncharov's The Same Old Story, quite often translated as a common story in most other translations. This is a fairly new translation within the last 5 years or so by Stephen Pearl, and I have to say, it's always hard to judge how good a translation is when you don't know the original, of course, But how Stephen Pearl, at least, has introduced me to Goncharov has made me want to read everything he wrote, which sadly isn't that much. He's only got 3 novels, and then he's got a collection, I think, of short stories and a non-fiction book. And then there's also a book coming out later this year, which is about, I think it's told through letters, and they're all from Alma Classics, and they're all by Stephen Pearl, but it's about his feud with Ivan Turgenev, as he believed Turgenev stole his ideas for, I can't remember which book Turgenev is supposed to have, pilfered from Goncharov. But anyway, the same old story. It's similar. Again, it's about a provincial man from quite far east, from what I can gather, in Russia, who has lofty ambitions to become a famous poet, very much like Lucien Chardin. This chap is called Alexander Aduyev, and he is going to move from his quite comfortable provincial life. I mean, he's an aristocrat. His family owns serfs. He doesn't want for anything. He's extremely spoiled by his mum, who he always calls mummy, even though he's in his early 20s and stuff. And the book starts with the preparation for the move and his mother running around like a headless chicken. So he moves off to St. Petersburg. He doesn't know anybody, and like Lucien in Lost Illusions, he has these grand illusions about life, which of course will be shattered. I mean, it's no secret or spoiler. It's just part of life anyway, isn't it? That we all start off, if you like, with grand illusions about things that very quickly turn out not to be as we imagined them. So he moves off to St. Petersburg, and it's very eye-opening for him. Basically, Alexander is a huge romantic idiot. He's over-emotional. He loves hugging people, kissing them. He's prone to falling head over heels in love, and every love he has is the greatest love that's ever been. But he has a family member in St. Petersburg, and it's his uncle, Peter. And immediately, you're going to like Uncle Peter. He's much more pragmatic. His head's screwed on, and supposedly sometimes he does come across as quite cold to Alexander. But as the story goes on, you realize that perhaps Peter does really have the best intentions for Alexander. And the book is shorter than Lost Illusions. It's Lost Illusions, where it's around almost 700 pages. This is under 400 pages. And the book, it doesn't have, Lost Illusions has a few kind of really dramatic moments, and it does have a bit of comedy in it, but there's quite a lot of bathos as well, and I suppose there is a bit in this. However, a lot of the book is based around conversations that Peter has with Alexander. Later on, Peter ends up with a wife, and therefore becomes Alexander's aunt. So it's conversations, if you like, between the 3 of them, either 2 at one go or all 3 together, and they are wonderful. They are wonderfully witty and funny and interesting. And Goncharov really has a special talent, I think, for honing in on these kind of foibles of human life and love and all this kind of stuff. So I was absolutely enraptured by this book, and would really, really recommend that you check it out. In fact, I was reading a review about it the other day, because I was thinking, I can't believe it's not better known. It's so sad. I mean, most people will know, if they know Goncharov at all, will know him from his work Oblomov, which I haven't read yet. I do have it. I have his 3 novels, which I did buy from Alma Books in these wonderful editions, all translated, as I say, by Stephen Pearl. And I was reading a review about it because I was just curious. I was curious after I read it. Am I crazy? Is this really such a great book? Or why isn't it better known? And in one of the reviews, it's really nice because they finished off the review with a comment by a well-known Russian critic called Vissarion Belinsky, where he said that reading the same old story is like eating cool watermelon on a hot summer's day. And I think that's exactly what it's like. There are some wonderful pastoral scenes in this, and it is a refreshing, fun, and extremely enjoyable read. However, I will caution you that there are certain dark elements to it, which I found it hard to understand. Goncharov doesn't really give much of his own feeling on the subject within this. And while it's different, or is it? I don't know. I mean, it is different to chattel slavery, I suppose. At least the transportation of people from Africa to the United States. But in the treatment, sometimes, the issue of serfs and serfdom, they are pretty appallingly treated, even by characters who you like in the book. They pretty much all of them tend to treat their serfs well, and the serfs are little better than slaves. I mean, they are owned by these wealthy Russians. When people talk about marriage options, there's dowries, and then so-and-so owns 100 serfs. And that is the only negative for an otherwise wonderful book, is just that it's something, unfortunately, I think it is something because it was such a normal part of life in Russia at the time Goncharov is writing, he doesn't really think of it as anything other than normal. But I don't think it detracts from enjoying a really wonderful story of lost illusions told in a different way. There's 10 years between the books. Balzac's came out first and Goncharov's 10 years later. And as I said, you can certainly see some parallels, and they are wonderful companion reads, but by no means are they the same story. Read it. Read them. Have a great weekend. See you all again very soon. Bye-bye.